Hello everyone, my name is Sterciuc and I'm the host of Pursuit of Freedom. Over the last few months, a number of people have asked me, why'd you start this podcast? So I thought I would take a minute and answer. I am a second generation immigrant. I'm 36, married and now having kids, and I realized I had never heard my own parents' story, full story of how they came here from communist Romania to here in the US. So I thought, what better people to start the podcast with than my own two parents? We know that Romanians were not the only people to overcome so much to get to the United States. We know that people from all over the world have come here for a better life. So if you have a story to share that you do not want to get lost, that you want to pass from generation to generation, that you want to use to motivate and encourage others, and just to encourage us to be more grateful for what we have, please reach out to us. Let us share and pass on for generations your story. Thank you so much for liking, subscribing, for sharing, for all the things. We really say thank you, and we'll see you next time. Hello everyone, my name is Sterciuc, and welcome to Pursuit of Freedom. Today, I'd like to introduce my father, Dr. Ben Sterciuc. He is husband to Leah, my mother. He is father to me and my sister, Flavia. He is grandfather to my two daughters, Flora and Olivia. Pursued and achieved 7 degrees in the medical field and theology, and recently completed his doctoral degree. You are an ordained pastor, a university professor, an entrepreneur all your life, started several businesses, and ultimately founded a nonprofit called Vital Solutions, which creates hope all over the world. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for being here and being willing to share your story. It is an honor to have you on our podcast.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation, Flavius. It's really a joy to be able to share these moments together and just to have a conversation about how we got here. I also want to congratulate you on this new idea, this new vision that you have for a podcast. So it's really a joy to see you doing well and sharing incredible stories with the world. So thank you for the invitation.
Thanks, Dad. I'd like to start from the beginning. What was your first memory in Romania?
I think my first memory from Romania really was from my family home. My mother is getting the kids ready, all of us ready for the day. By the window, I have this vivid memory. We would see these beautiful red peonies indicating really that summer is here and we're ready for a good day ahead. That's my first memory of as a child.
That's beautiful. Can you tell us about your childhood and your teenage years growing up in Romania?
I was born and raised in a Christian Romanian family in this small village, more specifically a Pentecostal family. So I grew up around faith and with foundation of faith from my parents. Our father and mother were peasants, they had a little house and a little small farm. My mother gave birth to 10 children, and one of my siblings passed away at the age of 2. When I was 9 years old, my father passed away, and that really caused our family to go through a really difficult time, being left behind to raise 9 children. She was only 36 when our father died, so 36 years old, having to raise 9 kids in a small village in Romania during communism. So her life was definitely very difficult, and so as a result, we tried to our best as kids to help and support. My childhood is a kind of a long memory of being together as siblings, trying to help mama, help each other survive. And then when it was time to go to school at 14 and becoming a teenager, it became all about taking care of myself and surviving. I was able to actually, during school breaks, to actually find work in the city where I was, so that I wouldn't have to come back and be a burden for my mother, as the older siblings did the same.
How did your mom feel about you leaving your city at 14 and not coming back? Or, I mean, I'm trying to imagine parents nowadays, like a 14-year-old, a freshman, saying, okay, I'm leaving, I'm going to school, and I may or may not come back. I don't know. Like,
Mama missed having me at home helping, but at the same time, maybe she was relieved that I'm learning to be self-sufficient and take care of myself, so I wouldn't be dependent on her. Yeah.
what kind of job did you have at 14?
Well, anything, moving things for a store, cleaning. I mean, even construction work, carrying bricks from place to place. I mean, anything that was available, I was willing to do, and of course, agricultural work. So I was asking people for work, and I was willing to do any kind of work. And for a small, skinny boy, that was not easy. So
At what age did you meet mom?
as I went to another city for my vocational school, Arad, that's where I met Leah for the first time. So I came from this village into this western city, Arad, and Leah comes from Alba, which is kind of a central Romania city, and we both ended up in the same city for school. Customary, we would attend church, so it just so happened that we attended the same church. So I noticed her. I thought she was the most beautiful young girl I've ever seen, with her black curly hair and big glasses that covered half her face. Her quiet demeanor, very shy, and I think I've seen her and known her for maybe 6, 8 months before she even noticed me the first time. We just connected and started talking, and realized that we like each other, and started dating, and falling in love and getting married right out of high school. And while we knew everything, was in some ways uncommon in that place and in that time, but at the same time, for us, it was just a beautiful story that evolved in that direction.
How did uh, how did her parents take it when you said, "Hey, I want to marry your 18-year-old daughter"?
It didn't go that well, I guess. Well, I didn't have anything. Um, I wasn't good looking. I was poor. I was an orphan. I didn't have a good family to back me up. Nobody really knew who I was. I didn't bring anything to the table other than my love for Leah. I think it took him some time to warm up to me, but I could be insistent or persistent. So I think over time I demonstrated that my love for Leah uh, was worth the risk for them as well, and eventually they accepted me. I think now they like me.
I think they more than like you. I think you're their son.
That is true.
So you get married. What's your first year of marriage like? You're trying to figure out marriage at the same time trying to survive in a communist country. Um, you're in school as well, and trying to work. That's a lot to handle.
There were a lot of different things that we had to navigate through, changing the city, moving to a new city. I had completed my vocational training as a train mechanic. So now in a new city, I'm trying to find a job as a train mechanic in Alba, and at the same time adjust to a new place. Didn't know anybody else other than Leah and her family, and trying to learn how to be married, how to be able to provide for my family in an environment in the 80s where communism was at its highest decade of intensity, and at the same time oppression and poverty, and the truth and reality coming to the surface that communism does not deliver what it promises.
What ultimately led to you making the decision that in order for me to give my family the life I want for them, I need to attempt to escape?
The short answer is you. Really, that sense of responsibility, things really became, in some ways, more meaningful, but more challenging because now not only we had to learn how to be married, how to survive in this environment, but now we were responsible for another human being, for a baby, for a child. And so a lot of the thoughts, a lot of the conversations were related to how will we be able to provide a future for our family, for our son. Just imagining our own lives, what we were going through every day just to survive, just to make it, and thinking that you would have to go through the same thing in 20 years, the same challenges, the same issues, the same limitation, oppression. It became really overwhelming to think that this is it. This is all we can do. This is all the life that we can provide for our family, for our son, for the future. Idea of freedom, the idea of living in a place where you don't have to just struggle to survive. Those ideas became a little more strong, just more coming to the surface in my heart and stronger in my mind, and began thinking about how would it be to actually provide my family with just a better life. And so from just some deep-seated hope, now this idea came to, well, maybe I should make this into a plan. I should plan how I would be able to do that. Of course, you couldn't talk to anybody about it. I couldn't even talk to mom about it at that time because I didn't have a well-formulated plan. I didn't know how. So I began to think and pray how to go about it without, um, divulging this idea, this desire to leave, to escape this oppressive environment and poverty and struggle, and to go to some other place where I could actually provide a good future for my family. And so I had a friend in a different city, and I began some conversations with him, um, and uh, planned and talked about the possibility of together escaping Romania at some point in the future.
Do you remember the date of that? Or the month and year?
I think it was kind of the beginning of 1988 when we started discussing this potential plan. And of course, it was just him and I aware of that. We couldn't tell anybody because one of the things about an environment like communist Romania was like you couldn't really trust anybody. There was an environment of fear, suspicion. Um, Really, everybody could turn into an agent of the secret police, Securitate, as we called it back then, and they could tell the Securitate that a family member or a friend or a coworker is considering or has anti-government ideas, because anything that had to do with freedom, with America, with the West, was considered anti-communist. Even if it was just simple, I'm listening to a radio station from the West. That was illegal. That was anti-communism. And so once I had a more or a better formulated plan and even a timeline together with my friend, I, for the first time, shared that idea with Leah. I was nervous to share it, and it was hard to sell an idea that you couldn't test. Like it wasn't like you can go close to the board, check it out, come home, and like this is a short plan. So her reaction of how's this possible? will it work? What's going to happen to me and Flavius? Her reaction was warranted, was, of course, in a way, disbelief that I'm even thinking about it. Um, we were, I remember in our conversation, we were whispering when we talked about this. Like, you couldn't talk about it outside. You couldn't talk about it out loud. You couldn't talk about it with anybody else, because you never knew who was listening and who's gonna tell the Securitate that you are harboring these kinds of ideas, and that had serious consequences. So it was a process. It wasn't just a one-time conversation. It was a process of talks and conversations and tears and cries and hugs and promises, up to the point where she agreed that, yes, maybe this is worth trying.
Hello, everyone. We interrupt this episode to acknowledge our episode sponsor, who is Vital Solutions. They operate in 7 different countries, from planting churches to building schools to building medical facilities to now humanitarian work from Ukraine to Romania to now Israel. We just want to say thank you to them. If you want to get more involved with what they're working on, check out the link below, vitalsoul.org, or click on the links below. We just want to say thank you to them. Now back to your episode. So after you and Mom agreed that this is the best route, how did you go from idea to action? What were the steps? Can you walk us through that?
Everything sounds better in theory, but implementing the plan is always difficult, especially in that kind of an environment where, as I said before, you couldn't really test it, you couldn't go to the border, you did not have access. There are no public means of doing research. It was all about trusting that this plan, based on just a very simple map,
And based on what other people have told you as well.
and based on exactly what other people have said, but everybody's afraid to share because they're afraid of you or others, that you may be a spy for the Securitate, you may be telling on them and bringing them in. So we had very limited ways of actually putting that plan together. But my friend from Arad and I talked about it and prayed about it and agreed that this is the best way to actually get on a train and go towards the border, towards Yugoslavia at that time. And there's a particular place along the border where the train passes. That's the closest to the border, and we should jump out of the train as the train makes its way, and simply try to figure out the right direction towards the border without any kind of help, without maps, without anything. I mean, even our simple presence on that train was a risk, because we had no reason to be on a train close to the border with Yugoslavia. Before that telling Leah that this is the day, that this is the time when I'm actually going to leave, and it seemed surreal to say goodbye to my wife and child, to say goodbye to you, not knowing exactly what's going to happen to me or to you as a result of me trying to escape. Emotionally, for just all around, just really, really difficult. So finally said my goodbyes and left. Uh, Mom crying at home with you, me crying on the train, leaving the city.
What was the conversation like with her parents? Or did you tell your mom that your siblings? Did anyone know?
Absolutely not.
Wow.
Absolutely not. Yeah, the only persons that knew was Leah, and then of course my friend who went with me. I could not tell anybody else. Absolutely nobody else, because the risk was somebody would inform the Securitate, because that was the culture, that was the fear, that was the this in a way the evil success of communism to make people fear each other so much that they would just tell on them or inform on them to the government. So I could not risk sharing with anybody else.
What were your what were your emotions after you left me and mom at the apartment, not knowing what was going to happen next ultimately?
Fear that I will that I may not see you again. Fear that I may not make it. Concerns about your future. What if this would take years for us to reunite? How is mom gonna take care of you without an income, without me as the provider at the house? But I think my motivation really overpowered my fear because I knew that unless I try something different, something like this, my family will not have a better future. And this is my chance to change the trajectory of my family.
I cannot imagine that decision making process, the risk and reward, you know. Yeah, that must have been really tough, especially at such a young age. You know, I mean, yeah,
I was 20 years old.
wow.
Yeah, it was a lot for that age to process and to do.
Maybe it helped that you also didn't know better, that you were kind of naive too, of like, I just have to make this work.
You're right. Actually, if I would have had all the facts about that plan, I would have never left home. Being naive about it actually helped walk away with this hope that this hopefully will work.
So, what happened next? You left us in the apartment, started your journey, and what happened?
I got on a train, connected with my friend in Arad, got on another train towards the town close to the border, and together, two 20-year-olds, fearful and hopeful at the same time, with no baggage, with no backpacks, with nothing, just the clothes on our backs, um, not even looking at each other, acting like we didn't know each other, just to bring another layer of insulation and diminish suspicion. In the new city, waited for the right train to take us closer to the border, and that would be like the last train of the day, so it's night time. So we embark, and we knew that at that point there was no return. We were committed because the train would arrive in this station in this town on the border, and we needed to have a valid reason to be there, and we didn't have a reason to be there. So if we would actually stay on that train all the way to the last station, we would be stopped by the border patrol and asked what we're doing there, and 100% we would be arrested. So our plan was to jump out of the train at this closest turn, closest point to the border. And so as it made its way, we kind of knew where it was, but again, on the map, that wasn't really clearly marked. So I just remember sitting close to the door and waiting when the train would start turning from this particular point. What it felt like it was, it's it's even hard to process now after decades after this to think what was I thinking? How? And then we make our way there, and when the train is really turning, I open the door and jump out. And then my friend follows. And in that moment, it really felt like as I'm taking this step, this is a step into the unknown, a step into the risk. And it was in the middle of the night, and it was dark. and jumping out into a place that I never been to. I never stepped on that ground before. I had no idea what the vegetation was like, what the terrain was like. I don't even know how I had the courage to do that.
You could have easily broken your leg and it's immediately over.
Exactly.
I mean, that's talk about faith.
So I jumped, and so did my friend from right behind me, and we're starting to figure out where we are and slowly to make our way. And of course, we stumble upon a foxhole with two soldiers,
Wow.
and they just stand up in front of us with AK-47 pointing at us. And it was quick. It wasn't long. I wish I could tell you a story like, and we walked for hours, and no, it was actually rather quick. And all of a sudden, I see these two soldiers with weapons. I wish I could tell you that this next phase of the journey was a long, elaborate, incredible plan and implementation, but the reality is, as we stumble upon this foxhole with two soldiers who clearly knew that that's the place to wait for people like us who attempted to get close to the border. And I'm staring at the two soldiers with their rifles pointing at us. And it was like one of those moments where your life kind of goes into the past and into the future in a moment, kind of merges together, and I'm thinking my life is over. They're gonna shoot me. Or maybe a best case scenario, they're gonna arrest me, which they did. Of course, they started yelling, they yelled, stop, or I'll shoot, and asking us to kneel and lift our hands, which we did. I'm shaking my head. I remember, like, I'm shaking that this is not happening. I'm probably dreaming this. Maybe this is a nightmare. This is the night before. Maybe this hasn't happened. I'm not on the trip yet. I'm not on the train yet. But here we are, in the middle of nowhere, on the ground, middle of this field. The soldiers are standing above us. We're kneeling. They're putting the handcuffs on us. And
So it was over before it really began.
it was over.
It
Just
must
like
have
that.
been it must have been just devastating.
Well, it was in many ways also because in reality, it was actually very close to the border. As they took us and we walked, uh, we could have crossed the border in just probably 2 hours. It was just hundreds of yards away. And when they took us to their base, when we saw how close we were, and if we just knew to jump somewhere else, if we just knew to go a slightly different route. But here we are, apprehended. They take us to one of the local jails, and basically they were capturing people like us that were attempting to flee, to escape Romania towards Yugoslavia. And I remember by like 6 or 7 in the morning, we made our way. And of course, along the way, they're beating us up. They're calling us traitors. They're calling us anti-communist, anti-government, all of this. And oh, you're going to die in prison, and you'll never see freedom again. You'll never see the sunlight again. And all of those things seem like possibilities that like that's our life from here on. So we make it to the jail, and I remember being shoved inside this very narrow cell where there were 2 sets of bunk beds filled with people, and it was very dark, and this very narrow space between the bunk beds and the wall, and people just standing, turned, and I get shoved inside there, and it's hot, and it stings terribly, and people talk over each other, and people are asking me, where did you get captured? And I don't even have any idea, well, like, what's happening, how I can't even process what just happened. So um, in that space, basically there were 16 people in a space for 4. In the next 3 days and 3 nights, actually, I don't get anything to eat or drink. 72 hours, I got absolutely nothing. So I'm just in a corner, not sure whether I'm alive or dead or dreaming or nightmarish kind of sense. And um, then they bring us some water that had something in it, some color. I think it was an attempt for a soup. And for the next several days, they gave us that liquid. So I had that. 7 days later, when I got pulled outside of that cell for the first time, so 7 days and 7 nights in one space where you couldn't really turn, like we had to take turn to turn on the other side. There was so crowded space.
After those 7 days, did at at some point, how did people not lose their minds with such little food and water, and actually zero food basically, and in that tight confined space? I mean, how did were there fights? Were there like, at some point people had to lose it?
Some people did. People would be so devastated by this uh, failed attempt, by being captured before they crossed the border, before even having a chance towards freedom. The desperation of that reality, people would just bang their heads on the walls. Um, Others would attempt suicide. When I got pulled out of that cell first time, 7 days, 7 nights later, I remember being brought out in the sunlight, and I just passed out from the sun, from the air. Like oxygen, air was so strong because I've been breathing this intoxicated air for 7 days and 7 nights with no food, just some liquid in the last few days, and lost 10 kilos, like 22 pounds or so in that week. And then they packed us up on a truck. Like sometimes when I watch things like a movie about the Jewish people being packed onto trains, cars of trains, and then they would push hard so they can close the door. That's how they transported us from that local jail to a bigger city, to a federal penitentiary, a communist prison. So like every stage had its own hellish nightmare. We were transported to the federal penitentiary in Timișoara as a city, and something's changed in the sense that it wasn't as crowded of a prison, yet there were other things. Now, this was a normal, regular prison, not just for those who attempted to escape Romania, but actually for all the criminals. And in some ways, because of my age, I was isolated from the general population, and I was assigned to a cell with other people my age, 18 to 21, so I was 20 years old. And they were considered the most dangerous and the most uncontrollable criminals in the prison. And so these 39 young guys put in one place, and the most crazy, dark human behavior that I can imagine. And I just thought when I got sent to that cell, this would basically be the end of me.
At what point in that journey did you finally get a hold of mom? How did that come to be? How long had it been since she had heard from you? Obviously, she didn't know that you were captured. What was that like?
Not yet. At this point, she was not aware. of my situation one way or another. In fact, it was, I think, about a month into this capturing and imprisonment that we knew that, okay, this is where we're going to be. And they actually gave us a standard postcard that they issued that we were allowed to write with a pencil and send a message to our family saying uh, the the words that they actually dictated to us to say that we are okay, we are in this location, in this city, and on such and such date we will have a court appearance to determine what the sentence will be. And so I sent that, trying to imagine. I mean, obviously, on one hand, I was glad that they didn't shoot me, that I was alive. On the other hand, I was trying to think what Leah will feel and think when she will see that the vision that I shared with her, the plan that I told her, the future that I presented her and convinced her to agree to, turned into a shadow dream.
In some ways, her life got harder.
Considerably so, because not only now she didn't have her husband to help, but her husband is imprisoned in a communist prison, and now she has to continue to care for you and also find a way to help me. And in that one note that we are allowed to say, in that on that postcard, we are allowed to say that we have the right to a monthly or bi-monthly visit, that she would be allowed to visit. And I also wrote that she should bring me like 10 packs of cigarettes or something like that. Of course, that probably would make no sense to mom because I was not a smoker or anything like that. But I couldn't explain to her that that was actually how we traded in prison for other things that we needed. And so, later on when she actually visited me in prison, it was probably one of the most emotional moments between Leah and I.
At that point, how long had it been since you've seen each other?
Uh, Probably 2 or 3 months. Yeah. Your mom comes to visit me in prison now, and I was trying to imagine her conversation with her parents saying, watch my kid because my husband is in prison now. It was hard. As a husband, as a father, I felt like a failure, that I failed in my plan, I failed in my duty, I failed in my responsibility, and I was ashamed of my failure. So the visit was hard. I knew she was trying to be brave, to be strong for me, but I felt so guilty that I'm putting this young woman through hell and everything that I promised her not coming through. In fact, it just got worse.
So, how did you survive prison life for those months? How was your time in there?
It's amazing how a human being adapts to even the most difficult circumstances. So I constantly had to just be aware of any movement in the cell, of anyone approaching me, because people, would make shanks and all kinds of small weapons. And even though we had shakedowns and checks and checking mornings and night and unannounced, there were still a lot of things happening even in that cell with 39 other young men who were the worst of the worst in that region. The most remarkable thing from my time in prison, what happened to me about a couple of months into my time there, when I was feeling probably at my lowest, my darkest moment, my lowest point, is in the middle of the night. I had just finished my turn to be awake, to look out for cellmates, and I was trying to go back to sleep about maybe 1 or 2 a.m. And I started contemplating the reality of my situation, and it seemed that the the anger, the rebellion that I had in my soul as a teenager, anger even against God for taking my father away at such a young age, and grown up without a parent, without a father, grown up poor, grown up isolated, all of those things, and have led me to this point in life to end up in a prison, losing everything that I had built towards up to that point. So I started crying and praying uh, for the first time in a long time. I was blaming God for all my failures, then realized that it wasn't God failing, it was actually me failing myself, failing my wife, failing my son. I felt really like I had hit rock bottom, and I surrendered my life to God. It's like, whatever you do from here on, I will accept your plan because my plan clearly didn't work. I want to be who you want me to be. And I want to do what you want me to do. And I want to go whatever you want me to go. That was a prayer that defined the rest of my life, and I didn't know at that time. But as I was praying that, and I was having that moment with God, and this light entered the cell. Everybody was asleep. There's nobody awake. There's nothing physically happening except I was on the top bed, on the bunk bed. The power of a current passed through me. In the moment, I felt forgiven, renewed, and free. I mean, literally, it felt like this burden was lifted off my shoulders. I mean, I was still in prison. My situation has not changed. Everything was the same, except in that very moment, I was free. And probably the most uh, zealous next 7 days of my life, because for the next 7 days, in that sharing with everybody to the point of annoyance, I led 7 people to Christ in 7 days. They were saying, like, you stop with your faith, stop with, you're still in prison, you're not free. And I said, yeah, I know what you're saying is true, but I'm free. I am free, and you can also be free even though you are in prison, because in Christ we can be free from our past, free from our burdens, from our challenges, because in Christ we can be free. It changed my life, changed the direction, the trajectory. Everything was changed from that point on.
Did you have any contact with anyone besides mom in your time in prison?
Outside, no, not at all. One of the interesting things was that actually when I was taken to courthouse, I guess, along with others, we in the vehicle that I was in stopped somewhere waiting for the vehicle to be repaired or some kind of reason to be there. And then I see on the other side of the yard someone kind of staring at me, and a policeman approaches me, comes close, but not within physical distance, just probably 10 yards from me, and says, "Are you Sterciuc?" And from sitting on the ground, just looked up, and I said yes. And in the moment I recognized him. He was a guy from our village who went to school and became a police officer. And he recognizes that I'm one of the Sterciuc orphans, but I'm a prisoner in the prison garb. And I was thinking, maybe he's going to give me some water, maybe he's going to give me some food. And all he said, "Aren't you ashamed of yourself? This is where you end up. I'm going to send a message to your mother." I mean, I was 20 years old, I was already married, had a child. And here he is from my village. Instead of saying, "Can I get you anything? Can I get you a cup of water or anything?" I was hoping it's a source of hope or something. And it turned out it's just another communist voice that's saying, "You should be ashamed of yourself for attempting to escape this country." And so that's how my mother found out that I was in prison, our family, the whole village, in fact.
After those months in prison, how did you find out your time in prison was coming to an end?
Well, during my time in prison, there wasn't a lot of communication from the guards or from anybody about our future. Simply things were just happening, and you would learn about it as they were happening. So obviously, I was praying for a miracle, and they just showed up in the cell, and they called a couple of names, me included, and we got moved into another cell just down the hall, and we knew that that's a cell where those that are going to be released are being prepped or interviewed or something. So that was a good news. So within several hours, I was processed and taken to the gate, signed some papers, and they said you are released. And
Wow.
it was obviously a shock, a good shock. Like, you mean I'm free to go? I said, yeah, you're free to go. Just report to the secret police in town, in Alba Iulia, so they know you, and here's the paperwork to turn in. I made it to the train station and came by train to Alba. And of course, Leah didn't know I'm coming. So you and mom didn't know.
Yeah, what was that moment like when you reconnected after all these months and you saw me for the first time?
It seemed like a unreal um, moment because I had prayed for, I had dreamed about this moment of coming back home to my wife and child. And so I kept hugging you both and just to make sure it's real, it's not a dream, that it's actually happening. I couldn't talk much. I was speechless. I couldn't say much. Of course, I was feeling terribly guilty for putting Leah through this, for putting everybody through it and bringing the shame in that city and that attempt to escape and being imprisoned, the shame that brought to the city and to the people was a heavy burden to carry. But it was absolutely beautiful to be reunited with Leah and you.
So you're back with your family. And so what was your reentry like back into society, community, church, family life? How did you process all that? And you had to get a job.
Well, I'll begin with this. The condition of the sentence was that I will find a job within 30 days and complete the next 6 months of my sentence um, working for a state company, factory, or construction site or something like that, where I would just fulfill my sentence that way. And the government would take the money. I would not get paid, but just complete my sentence. So that part was very difficult because now we were getting into the winter and there are no jobs available. And everywhere I went and applied for a job, I had to give documentation from the prison, and nobody wanted to hire a convict. And later I found out that they would the secret police, the Securitate, would call ahead and say, hey, this guy's coming, don't hire him, because they just wanted to get rid of me and say, if I don't find a job in 30 days, I'll go back to prison. So they really wanted to send me back and not have to deal with me.
So what job did you ultimately find for your work sentence?
Eventually, I was able to find a job at a construction site, and I was working as just a manual laborer there, which was not fun at all because of the type of job and the environment and the stigma that I carried with me as a convict. Um, so that was a serious challenge.
After those 6 months, what happened?
So Leah and I had a lot of conversations about what the future holds and how this will play out, because obviously I had lost my previous job. I was constantly under surveillance. The apartment was, Leah was followed, and so the situation was really difficult. And we knew that this will not end. This will continue to be so. So we prayerfully considered potentially doing another attempt because we knew there's no future for our family. If there wasn't one before, now with all this package and with this background, there's no way we're going to make it. So we started praying and considering to make another run for it and escape, hopefully for good.
How did you mentally prepare for the risk of another attempt where obviously if you get caught again, you are in prison way longer this time?
It's a very, very hard question because on one hand, I felt like I had no choice. I, that was the only viable choice for my family. And I wasn't really thinking of myself, really, what it would mean to me, only that if I actually make it, I can create a future for my family. I can rescue my family. I can give you and mom a better life, a better future. And so I knew from the previous experience that if I get captured again, I'm facing 15 to 20 years in prison. But in a way, it didn't matter how many years, because I knew that if I'm captured again, things will be considerably more difficult this time around, and there's no way that I might survive. So I didn't give myself that possibility. And so I pray that the Lord will just open the right path, the right door, the right plan, and that it will work this time.
So, what was the plan and how did you execute it this time better?
The friend from Arad that accompanied me the first time around the year before um, had attempted again just a few months before this time in March of 1989, and he made it. So that gave me a lot of hope and a lot of courage that I might make it too. I also heard of a friend who, also from Arad, who was just sent back or returned by the Hungarian military because he was a minor. He was just shy of 18 years of age or something like that. And he made it because he knew the path. He made it into Hungary, but he was sent back because he didn't meet the age criteria. So I've contacted him and I asked him if he's going to go again. He says, yeah, just I need 2 more months or something like that to meet the age criteria, and then I'll go again. So together we made a plan, and one other friend who spoke Hungarian, um, he came along because of the language, and we felt like, well, maybe there's three of us, we can help each other, and we made a plan. I communicated that to Leah, and we prayed, and then on June 13th, I said goodbye to you and mom and left again. So got on a train, went to Arad, met with uh, my friends, and somebody took us to a meeting point where we were supposed to be dropped off from this car, which we were. And the plan that evening was to walk along this river all the way into Hungary. And my friend Theo is actually no longer with us. So we got dropped off, and here we are, set out to walk an entire night. To make a long story short, we make it to close to the border about 6 o'clock in the morning. So now it's June 14, 1989, about 6 a.m. The other friend goes up on this little hill to look over these fields and see how close the border was. And he's taking his time. He's not coming back to me and Theo. And as we climb on the bank of the river, we see on the left side that our friend is looking towards Hungary. But in the distance, we see two soldiers patrolling, coming towards us. So they're chatting, they're talking, smoking, coming this way. We're trying to get our friend's attention, and we see that he's not hearing us. Obviously, we can't be loud because we would attract the attention of the soldiers. So in that moment, I made the decision that this is do or die. This is the moment. This is as close as I can get to freedom. If I don't make it now, it's going to be over because I see the soldiers. I've experienced the moment of being captured. And so our friend is turning to go back down by the river. The soldiers notice his movement. They start to run and follow him. And in that moment, I tell my friend Teo, I said, let's run. So I roll over the bank on the other side into the field, and literally I hear the soldiers talking to to our friend, our third guy, saying, stop, or I'll shoot. Are you alone? Who else is with you? Where are they? And so in these moments, I said, let's run. So I get up and start running through the field of corn. And I remember these things from movies, like if you run in zigzag, then you have less of a chance to be shot. So I'm starting to run in zigzag through the field of corn, and Theo was following me. Then we make it to the sunflower field, and I have this vivid memory of, as I'm running, these beautiful flowers, the sunflowers, just, it's almost like they were turning the roundness of the flower towards us and guiding. I know that sounds unbelievable, but it felt like, and behind us, one soldier stayed with our friend who just got captured. They shot in the air to announce, to basically tell the others that there's people running, and then we hear dogs being released, and then we hear bullets being shot behind us through the fields of corn and sunflower, and in my mind I'm thinking, I have to survive this. I'm running for my life. And even though the entire border just got awakened by what was happening and being alerted to these two runners, soldiers running around. They had these observation posts, so you see them in the distance, and they're shooting this way, but the soldiers from behind, they're shooting towards Hungary after us to stop us. And I don't know if they are shooting to kill, but you know, there are bullets coming behind us.
But unintentionally, they're also shooting towards Hungary.
Exactly. And I think that's part of why the entire commotion, the entire moment, those several minutes that it took for us to cross the field of corn and the field of sunflower, all of a sudden I see this freshly plowed, maybe a 6 foot wide piece of ground that's at the edge of the field, and I'm thinking, this is the border. I'm I'm 2 meters away from freedom. And literally I stepped once and stepped again into Hungary, into freedom. It was so incredibly surreal to know that that's what I have been dreaming for years. I've been praying for, I've been desiring, and it's happening. But I can't stop because the soldiers are shooting behind me. We keep running maybe another half a mile or so until we make it into the woods. In the meantime, the Hungarian military, the border patrol on that side, got alerted, and so we make it to the woods, and then we hear all this commotion and movement and commands. Of course, we've lost our third guy who spoke Hungarian, so we had no idea what was being said. We hide in the woods. We dig a hole and cover ourselves with leaves, and we're sitting there. It's like, maybe this is gonna settle down. Maybe they're gonna get tired of searching and they're gonna leave. And I remember just now, just like it just happened, went on the ground and in this little foxhole covered in dead leaves, and within maybe just, I don't know, 50 yards from us, there's a row of soldier and dogs, and the dogs are barking, and they stop for lunch because it's noon.
No way.
And the dogs are going crazy because they're probably smelling us or sensing us there, and they, whatever they're talking or they're saying, they eat, they finish their break and then stand up, and obviously within a minute they find us, and these Hungarian soldiers
Shouting things you don't understand.
I don't know what they're saying. They seem angry. The dogs are angry. I don't know whether to be happy that we were arrested, we were captured by Hungarian soldiers, or to be afraid. Obviously, the experience from the year before brought a lot of those emotions to the surface. So they bring an interpreter, we tell the story, and while we're at their military base, they call the Romanian side military base to verify if the story is true. What I had with me was a Romanian ID card and the paperwork from my prison release. So I'm telling the interpreter that, this is what happened, and I've been, persecuted for my faith, for not being in agreement with the communist political agenda and all of this. And they said, no, you two are terrorists and you caused all this. And I'm begging them for my life. I'm saying, I just want freedom. I just want to be able to live in freedom for my family. And so 3 days, 3 nights, we're being interrogated in this room by the Hungarian military. Suddenly, one soldier comes with the interpreter and says, "You're free to go. Your story checks out." And they gave us 1,000 forints, which is like $20 or whatever it was the value, and says, "Go to the bus station and go to Budapest." And just like that, we were released to go to the gate of the military base to.
I'm sure it almost felt like a trap. Like,
It. That's exactly what it felt like.
This is too easy.
Like, they're sending us and they're gonna capture us again, and now
they're
they're
giving
gonna.
us money.
Yeah, that was really confusing. Like, why are you doing that? And so we walked out the gate, me and Theo, and we looked at each other, and I said, "Let's run." So we just start running, and we don't know where because we've never been there. We're in this,
The soldiers are probably like, we said they can go. Like, they don't need to run.
it was sad and funny at the same time because nobody was running after us, and it's like, okay, nobody's coming, so maybe we should slow down and figure out what's happening. But we made it to the bus station, got on a bus, paid with the money they gave us, and went to Budapest, just like that, from a border town, free, on a bus to the capital of Hungary, Budapest.
That's amazing. So how soon after all that, at this point, it's probably been a week since you've spoken to mom? Or how soon were you able to get word to mom that you made it, that you're alive? And
In Budapest, obviously nobody was waiting for us, so we were living on the streets, under bridges and parks, and survived on whatever we could. But I was able to find coins and phone booths, and gathered enough coins. Yeah, probably over a week or maybe 10 days or so into it, I had enough coins to call at home and to say to mom, "I'm free."
that's amazing. What was that conversation like? What was her reaction?
She was silent for a while. Like, she couldn't believe that that's true. And of course, the phones were tapped. We didn't have a phone in our apartment. We knew that there are people listening, so we were careful what to say. And I was like, "Are you sure?" "Yeah, I'm sure. Everything's okay." Of course, I couldn't say, "Yeah, I just slept in the park. Dogs were coming," or like, but I was free.
Yeah.
I was finally, the first time in my life, free to go wherever I was. And it didn't matter that I'm homeless in Budapest. I was free. And that mattered. And I think that message just came across even in the words that I use and the tone of my voice. And I had hoped at that time that encouraged mom that we're going to be okay as a family.
So how long were you in Budapest? What happened next with that?
I was in Budapest for several weeks. I think it's 5 or 6 weeks. And I looked for the American embassy. I looked for a refugee camp, and none of those were not available in Budapest. There was no such thing, since there was no legal way to be processed and immigrate and move forward while I was still homeless on the streets. At night, we would try to find shelter in bus stations, train stations, and sometimes the police would chase us out. And I'm wondering about this possibility. I wonder if I can hide in a train and just cross like that. And I knew that the only place a human can hide would be behind the water tank above the or in the attic of a restroom of a train, a restroom. But the challenge was finding the right tool to open that ceiling gate, that opening for a human to get in. Kind of getting that inspiration, that idea of go into the next country from Hungary was in a way really a lifesaver because now there was a real possibility. I decided that that's the plan. I shared it with my friend Theo, and we also found someone who that would be able to, once we got in the attic, they would be able to close us up. And we said, we'll give you the tools, we'll sell you the plan if you are going to be that person to lock us in. The day comes, the time comes when I'm ready to do that. And I remember I had to watch when the custom officers would enter a train car, go through it, and then go the other side with the dogs and go to the next car. But it was a very small time window when one can get into the train and without making noises open the ceiling and go in, hide, and be locked again. I was able to get in and onto the train. I was waiting for my friend to come. He just stayed there. He didn't come that time, but I was able to get locked in, and literally the train started moving, and in 3 hours it stopped. And I knew that it takes 3 hours from Budapest to Vienna. So 3 hours later, I've arrived in Vienna by train, not sitting like a normal person, but hiding behind the water tank. I hear people getting out, and then it's quiet. Then all of a sudden, the train starts moving again. So I'm thinking, oh, wait, now it's going back. So I'm panicking. So I'm breaking the little gate in the ceiling and breaking it down and dropping down in the restroom and start running and just jump out of the train and jump over the fence. And here I am in Vienna. Same clothes that I left home with, same pair of jeans and a t-shirt, but now with a layer of oil and all the stuff that's accumulated in the attic of a train. But I'm free and I'm in Vienna now.
And while you were there, obviously on the news, you saw what was happening in Romania.
Yeah, just a few months later, a revolution happened in Romania. It's just incredible because we're sitting in a refugee camp where we've been freedom for a few months now. All of a sudden, seen on the news that these things are happening in Romania, which we never thought it would be possible for people to actually have an actual protest, for people to, stand in front of a church and not allow the secret police or the military to enter, and all of these things were happening. And so, within days, things were just kind of being replicated from one city to another, and all of a sudden, there's a full-blown revolution attempting to overthrow the government. And now the president of Romania, Ceausescu, is being chased, and he's fleeing the palace and all of those things, and he gets captured, him and his wife and some of the top leaders. And I remember talking to your mom, talking to Leah over the phone, asking her, is this real? Is this possible? Is this happening? And of course, it was difficult to communicate by phone because there was a lot of uncertainty and things were happening in Romania and so many different ways. But for us, it was just incredible. It was hard to believe that that was happening in our country. And some people were considering, well, if this is the case, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back and fight. Personally, I didn't feel that patriotic because I didn't trust that this is real, that this is going to happen and this is going to change things for the better or for real. So all I was thinking is, how do I get my wife and son from there so they're not harmed in the process? I don't know.
And I believe ultimately you still thought life is going to be better in the US.
Absolutely, yeah. For me personally, freedom was was only possible in America. Was only not that that was only possible in the U.S. There,
Wow.
because really America represented that ideal, that beacon of hope, that place where you can be fully free as a human. And I didn't want to give up on that dream. I really thought that that's going to happen only if we make it to America.
So how were you finally reunited with mom and me?
Well, um, we heard that they're going to start giving passports in this as the revolution really changed some things, and this provisional government was being formed in Romania. I told mom that, I told Leah that she needs to be the first in line to get a passport because things will change so fast. She would say, well, it'll take a few weeks and prepare. And I said, no, 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 don't take time. You don't know how things are going to change overnight. If they're giving passports, go to the police station and get a passport right away. And she was able to be, first in line there with you and get a passport. When I called, we had a kind of an agreed upon time to call and communicate. And she said, I have the passport. And when I heard that, it's just this wave of hope just filled me. It's like, well, come. What are you waiting for? You have the passport. Just just come to Vienna. I'm waiting for you. He said, well, I'll just take some time to prepare. Like, there's nothing to prepare. Things could change in the next few days or weeks. I even remember that I got a little maybe too tough, and I said, if you don't show up in a couple of days, don't even come because you don't understand. Things will change. 2 days later, she took you and a couple of suitcases, and I remember morning, just this beautiful January cold winter morning, going to the train station in Vienna. Now, not jumping out of a train, dirty and smelly, but with a bouquet of roses waiting for my wife and son to arrive in Vienna.
What was that first initial sight like when you saw?
Well, there wasn't an initial sight because people were getting out of the train, and Leah wasn't there, and I didn't see her, didn't see you. So I thought maybe I misunderstood, maybe it's the wrong date. So when I see that everybody's coming out, and but you guys are not coming out of the train, so I went in and started looking. Then I saw Leah and you, and just emotionally, I was just simply overwhelmed with just that sense of we're finally together. This dream, this journey, whatever is going to happen next, we're together.
And at this point, how long had it been since all three of us had been together?
Over 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah, some long months being away from each other, and so much trauma has happened to me in one way, to mom in a different way, and it's just been so hard to be apart. And yet, here's this beautiful moment when we are reunited as a family again.
That's amazing. And how did you get from there to the refugee camp to ultimately the US?
Within a few days, I was able to organize for her and you to take you to the refugee camp and register you and process getting you processed and added to my file, so that now instead of applying as just one guy by myself, now I got my wife and son with me. So it was a complete file, and the application um, was able to. I guess they moved it forward because families had priorities versus a single person, and they quarantined you guys for a while, and so that was kind of rough because after just those 2 3 days together, walking around the city and just celebrating being together, now you have to go into this quarantine time. But we got through that, as difficult as the quarantine time was for you and mom. And then for the remaining of the year, actually, we were able to be in one of the locations that the refugee system assigned us to go, and um, go through this process of just waiting for our visa approval to come to the U.S.
What was it like when you found out that you got a visa to come to the United States?
That was a very um, poignant, profound moment for me because I remember it was a Friday. I came from my day job there, um, and I saw a letter with my name on it. So I opened the letter, and there says, "Your application has been approved. You have been granted a USA visa for you and your family. Come to the refugee camp in Vienna Monday morning to be processed." I remember just handing it over to mom. I said, "Leah, read this." Then I just sat down and I just broke down because years of dreaming, praying, fighting, attempting, suffering have come to this end that actually was good, was positive, was approved. The dream of going to America to experience freedom for the rest of our lives has come true, and we we're going to America on Monday.
So you get to America, it's a new start, it's a new life, but also uh, it isn't easy either coming as a political refugee into a new country. You don't speak the language, you don't have a job, a place to live. And how did you navigate those first few years in the US with a young family and trying to adapt to this new life?
Looking back, I don't really know how, but I do remember this sense of arrival, of arrival in this place that's going to be our home for the remaining of our life. And that was a hopeful feeling, was a sense of belonging. I was frankly very surprised by the gracious way Americans would receive us, just people on the street or at the store, or just random people that would just be kind to us. And we didn't speak the language, so it's very challenging for us to even communicate. But you can see that probably one of the immediate shocker was the smile of the Americans. Everybody was smiling. Like, I was wondering, why is everybody smiling? That was different because coming from a communist country that is dark and oppressive and fearful, and here we are in a new place in America where everybody is smiling. It seems like everybody was just enjoying life. Overall sense of being welcomed in the country, that helped, that gave us hope, that gave us courage, and motivated us to be grateful for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because America didn't owe us anything.
True.
They didn't have to take us in. America didn't have to adopt us, but they did, and that's a privilege. So we knew it's a privilege. It's an honor. It's a joy. It's a grace that was given to us that we didn't deserve. So I think that helped with the mindset of just working, learning the language, adapting, being grateful, not feeling entitled for anything because nobody owed us anything. And so obviously we worked hard, and we made every effort to learn the language. And I mean, from very humble and small beginnings, learning simple things, like I didn't speak any English whatsoever when I came here. Um, I mean, obviously, I spoke Romanian and I had learned German by default living in Austria. Um, but going to the store, even the first few weeks, and learning things, like I was so stressed out when I would go to the cashier, just getting in line, and I would be next, and I was stressing out, like what they're gonna ask me. And I often now joke that I ask people, "What do you think were my first two words that I learned in English in America?" And people take a guess, like "I love you" or "ice cream" or McDonald's. And no, 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 that's not it. First two words that I've learned in this country when we came were paper or plastic. because you got to go to the store and buy food for the family. And I was stressing, like, what are they asking? You know, they're asking paper or plastic.
So now we have been in the US for 33 years. What does your family look like now?
Leah and I are just simply overwhelmed with gratitude for the life that God allowed us to build here. Um, a life that we only dreamed of, to have a family, to be able to be together, for Leah and I to be together, but to be together with you, our son, and with our daughter, Flavia. And now to be blessed to have a daughter-in-law, and you guys blessed us with grandkids, which is just another level of love, and we're just overwhelmed by that, by the goodness of God, and to get to see the third generation. I never really thought that far, that I'll get to see that, to see your daughters, our granddaughters, see them running around. When they call me Papa, they just run into my arms. It just makes everything that we went through, and 30 some years ago, worth it, because we know that because of that, because of what we went through, we had a better life here. We provided a better life for you and your sister.
Also, I don't want to miss a chance to ask you what you did for work all these years. I mean, I know you've had who knows how many jobs over the last 33 years, but I also have always admired your entrepreneurial spirit. Would you share about what you've actually done?
I pursued education, um, initially to learn the language, and then went into the medical field and got an RN degree, and continued to get more, master's level, and alongside, pursued theology education as well. Because of my RN degree, because of my medical background, I was able to start a couple of businesses in the elder care field as a geriatric specialist, running elder care facilities. I guess the fact that we had the courage to change our lives and risk our lives for freedom and for better life for our family, there's a sense of, a responsibility to make the most for the new life, for the new beginning, for the chance and life that God has given us in this country. And so we want to make the most of it, whether it's through education, or the entrepreneurial work that we do, starting businesses or companies or nonprofits, like the work that we do through Vital Solutions. We just have this moral sense that we gotta make the most of it. We're not gonna be idle, just sitting around and waiting. And for the remaining of our lives, God willing, we're gonna continue pursuing, freedom, ideas, business, nonprofit work, because in the end, God brought us here, for a purpose, and we want to fulfill that purpose.
I think lastly, I want to ask you an important question. In this political climate that we are currently in the US, I wanted to know what are your thoughts on freedom? I've always admired, like I said, that you pursued degrees, your entrepreneurial spirit, but you also have a passion for helping people. So, amidst all that, being this is the land of opportunity, the reason so many people from around the world want to be here, what are your thoughts? And what do you have any encouragement to others who battle with that word here in the US?
I think freedom is often misinterpreted and misused, but freedom, to me, really means more than the freedom to move about, to move around, but it's a freedom to think independently, a freedom to make your own choices, uh, freedom to pursue opportunities, freedom to vote in, in ways that you as an individual think is appropriate. I am concerned about certain things, and the direction in which this country is going, because I see that it's so easy for some that have never experienced lack of freedom to give it up.
Mm.
why can't we still be friends and neighbors and part of the same community, and have the freedom to have a different opinion, whether it's about politics or business or any other fields. I think freedom is so essential. It's really concerning is the fact that it seems like there's a movement towards giving more power to the government and less freedom to the individual. I do see some similarities between kind of the direction um, where things are going in this political climate with the fear, the the oppression that I've witnessed and experienced in communist Romania. Um, the propaganda, the narrative, there seems to be a movement towards making everyone agree with the government's narrative about certain things. And that's what made America America, that it's okay to have different opinions and still function together in the society. If we lose the freedom that we've experienced so far, some of the sacrifices that have been made in the past will be in vain. And so I stand for freedom. I will continue to pursue freedom, and I will encourage everyone to continue to pursue freedom.
Well said. Well said. Um, in that note, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for your pursuit of freedom for our family. I've always admired your drive and your just wanting to get the most out of life that you can. Uh, I want you to know that it's motivated me to want better for my kids, to push and not just do more for my family, but give back and do more for others too. And so I just want to say that I respect you and I will be forever indebted for what you've done and the sacrifices you made and the risks you took um, for a better life for our family. And um, I hope that you feel at the end that you lived a good life because as your son, you have. And so I love you, Pops, and thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being my son. Thank you for the invitation to be part of this and for just the opportunity to share the story together. This is a very special day, and it gives me such joy to see the man you have become, the way you love your wife, Molly, the way you raise your daughters together. It's uh, it's so rewarding for me and mom to just watch you and your sister and to see how you are doing well and enjoy the freedom in this country. I love you, son.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. This is Pursuit of Freedom. Stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you.